"The child you bore was never my heir," the Duke of Rothmere declared before the assembled family. "From this day forward, my nephew will stand as heir presumptive and assume control of every Rothmere estate not bound to the title." Arabella Vale did not look at her husband. Her eyes remained fixed on the miniature cradle beside the chapel altar, the same silver-trimmed cradle that had been carried from her chamber empty 5 years earlier, after Dr. Wren told her that her newborn son had never drawn breath. Yet Arabella had heard him cry. She remembered the sound more clearly than she remembered the physician's face, one fierce, living cry cutting through the fog of the blue medicine Wren had forced between her lips. She had tried to raise her head, but her limbs would not obey her. Moments later, someone carried her child away. By morning there was no body for her to see, no properly signed burial record, and no midwife left at Rothmere to answer her questions. 5 years of demanding the truth had brought Arabella to this chapel, where her husband now intended to use her supposed childlessness to remove the last authority she possessed. Lucian Harcourt knelt before the altar in an ivory waistcoat, his head bowed with practiced humility. At 24, Julian's nephew was handsome, polished, and careful, never to display ambition when his uncle was watching. Julian held the Rothmere signet above him, not as a transfer of the dukedom, which no private ceremony could grant, but as a public declaration that Lucian would henceforth act with the Duke's confidence. "You told me this gathering concerned the tenants' winter provisions," Arabella said. Julian finally met her eyes. "I told you what was necessary to ensure your attendance." A few relatives shifted in the pews. No one objected. Lady Lavinia Harcourt, Julian's younger sister and Lucian's mother, sat nearest the altar in a silver-gray gown. Satisfaction touched her mouth before disappearing behind an expression of solemn concern. Arabella turned back to her husband. "What exactly have you signed?" "A new family settlement. Lucian will supervise the unentailed estates, the household accounts, and all investments held in my name. My solicitor will send you the final terms tomorrow." Those accounts were solvent because of Arabella. When she married Julian, 3 farms were failing. Rents had disappeared into a steward's private purse, and Rothmere owed more than Julian had admitted during their courtship. Arabella had spent 4 years rebuilding the ledgers, renegotiating leases, and restoring the farms with methods learned from her merchant father. Julian had once called her the finest mind at Rothmere. Now he was handing her work to Lucian. "And my marriage trust?" she asked. "It will remain untouched. But I will no longer control the income derived from the properties I restored. The properties belong to Rothmere. The debts belong to Rothmere as well. I do not recall Lucian volunteering to inherit those." A servant lowered his gaze to hide a reaction. Lucian rose. "I never asked for what is yours, Aunt Arabella. You allowed the documents to be prepared. I agreed to help my uncle protect the family." "From what?" His eyes flickered toward the cradle. Julian answered for him. "From uncertainty." The word struck more deeply than an accusation. Arabella crossed the aisle until only the altar rail separated her from her husband. "There is no uncertainty. I gave birth to a living boy." "You were feverish." "I was drugged. Dr. Wren recorded a stillbirth. Dr. Wren also refused to show me my son." Julian's jaw tightened. They had fought this battle in private until he began locking the nursery, withholding household records, and forbidding servants to discuss the night of the birth. Now he had chosen to finish it publicly. "My mother, my physician, and every person present that night confirmed the same account," he said. "Only you remember otherwise." The midwife never confirmed it. A silence settled over the chapel. Agnes Pike had disappeared before sunrise on the morning after the birth. Julian claimed she had gone to care for a dying sister in Yorkshire, but Arabella's letters to every Pike family she could locate had produced no trace of such a sister. Lavinia rose from the front pew. "Must we indulge this again? My brother has spent 5 years protecting you from the humiliation of these accusations." "Protecting me?" Arabella looked around at the relatives invited to witness her removal. "Is that what you call this?" Julian's face hardened. "This ceremony concerns Rothmere's future, not your grief." "My grief is convenient when you need to silence me." He placed the signet in Lucian's hand. It was not the title, but it gave Lucian something nearly as dangerous: access to Julian's correspondence, accounts, seals, and authority over the people who had once answered to Arabella. Julian had been offered one final chance to investigate before empowering the family that had always despised his wife. He had chosen control instead. "Lucian Harcourt will assume his duties immediately," he announced. "The Duchess will surrender the account room keys before supper." The chapel doors opened. A gust extinguished 2 candles near the rear pew. An elderly woman stood on the threshold, soaked from the rain and leaning heavily on a crooked ash cane. Mud covered the hem of her brown dress, and blood had dried across one sleeve. Arabella knew her before the woman raised her face. "Agnes!" Julian descended from the altar. "How did you enter this house?" The former midwife ignored him. Her frightened eyes searched the chapel until they found Arabella. "I came before they learned I was alive." Lucian's fingers closed around the signet. Lavinia went perfectly still. Agnes reached beneath her cloak and removed a small leather book bound with black cord. Julian moved toward her, but Arabella crossed the aisle first. "What is that?" Arabella asked. "My record of every child I delivered." Agnes placed the book in her hands. The pages trembled beneath Arabella's fingers as she found the date that had divided her life. Beside her name, Agnes had recorded the hour of delivery and the condition of the infant: male child, strong lungs, dark hair, born living. Arabella could no longer hear the whispers rising around her. She looked at the woman who had vanished 5 years ago. "Where is my son?" Terror entered Agnes's face. "Your son did not die, Your Grace." She glanced toward Lavinia and Lucian. He was carried out through the east passage before dawn. Julian seized the book before Arabella could turn another page. "This proves only that Agnes wrote those words." "The ink is 5 years old," Arabella said. "Your solicitor can examine it. And while he does, no one leaves this chapel." Agnes swayed beside her. Blood seeped through the sleeve of her dress and fell onto the stone floor. Arabella caught her before she collapsed. "What happened to you?" "They found me near Millcross." Agnes struggled for breath. "I escaped before they could take the book." "Who found you?" Agnes looked toward Lavinia, but pain twisted her face before she could answer. Julian called for Dr. Wren. No, Arabella's refusal silenced the chapel. Wren signed the false record. "Send for Mrs. Fenwick from the village. My physician will attend her. Then she may die before she names the person who stole our son." Something changed in Julian's expression. Not belief, but the first wound in his certainty. He ordered a footman to fetch Mrs. Fenwick. As the relatives were escorted from the chapel, Lucian approached the fallen midwife. His face displayed concern, yet his attention remained on the book in Julian's hand. "Did Agnes say where the child was taken?" he asked. Arabella studied him. "Why do you assume she knows?" His hesitation lasted only a moment. "She returned after 5 years. It seems reasonable." Behind him, Lavinia tightened her gloves. "This woman may be an extortionist. Until her story is verified, none of us should encourage Arabella's fantasies." Agnes's eyes opened. With surprising strength, she caught Arabella's wrist and pulled her closer. "The cradle," she whispered. "It was never empty." Then her body went limp. Mrs. Fenwick arrived within the hour and found a deep cut in Agnes's arm, along with signs that she had been given too much laudanum. She believed Agnes would survive, but not regain consciousness soon. Julian ordered 2 guards outside the room and took the birth book to his study. Arabella went to the abandoned nursery. The door had remained locked since the morning Julian ordered the room closed. He had claimed he was protecting her from grief. In truth, he had sealed away the only place that might have contradicted the story he chose to believe. Arabella removed a narrow brass pick from her sewing case. Her father had taught her to open damaged document chests long before she married into a family that considered practical knowledge beneath them. The lock yielded. Dust covered the covered furniture. The curtains remained drawn, and the small cradle from the chapel had already been returned to its place beside the empty bed. Arabella turned it over. One panel in the base gave a hollow sound. She worked the brass pick beneath its edge until the wood lifted. Inside lay a silver identification bracelet bearing the Vale crest. Her breath stopped. She remembered fastening it around her son's tiny wrist before Dr. Wren took him. On the reverse, beneath years of tarnish, were two engraved initials, S.V. Samuel Vale, the name she had chosen before Julian's mother insisted that speaking it would prolong her delusion. Beneath the bracelet lay a scrap of linen stained blue and a folded payment receipt. The receipt named "No Child," but it recorded £50 delivered by Lavinia Harcourt to Dr. Wren on the morning after Arabella's confinement. The nursery door closed behind her. Lucian stood against it. "You should not have come here," he said. Arabella concealed the receipt inside her sleeve but kept the bracelet visible. "You knew something was hidden in the cradle. My mother paid Wren for his discretion. Nothing more." Discretion concerning what? A duchess who woke from a difficult birth accusing everyone around her of stealing a dead child. Arabella moved toward the door. Lucian did not step aside. "Give me the bracelet." "No. If you carry that downstairs, you will destroy this family over an object anyone could have placed here. You are remarkably frightened of an object that proves nothing." His composure broke. He caught her wrist and reached for the bracelet. Arabella drove the point of the brass pick into the back of his hand. Lucian recoiled with a cry. She reached the door, but Julian entered before she could open it. He saw Lucian's bleeding hand, the pick in Arabella's fingers, and the overturned cradle. What happened? "She attacked me," Lucian said. "He tried to take this." Arabella placed the bracelet in Julian's palm. Color drained from his face as he recognized the crest and initials. For one long moment, she believed the evidence had finally reached him. Then Lucian said quietly, "She needs to be protected from herself." Julian closed his fingers around the bracelet. "Escort Arabella to the west wing," he ordered the guards. She stared at him. "Your sister paid Wren £50 the morning our child disappeared. The receipt is hidden in my sleeve. Ask for it." Julian looked toward Lucian, then back at his wife. "Give me the receipt." "No. You have already taken Agnes's book and the bracelet. You will not take the last proof from me while leaving Lucian free." His face hardened. "Then you leave me no choice. You had a choice 5 years ago. You had another in the chapel, and you have one now." Julian remained silent. As the guards approached, Arabella understood that his betrayal was no longer an error born from grief. Faced with evidence, he still preferred control over truth. She slipped the receipt deeper into her sleeve and allowed the guards to take her away. This time, she would not wait for her husband to believe her. The west wing door was locked from the outside. Arabella did not waste time testing it twice. Julian had removed her writing paper and ordered the servants to deny her visitors, but he had forgotten the bell rope beside the fireplace. It summoned not a footman, but Mrs. Cole, the housekeeper who had worked with Arabella throughout the restoration of the Rothmere estates. Mrs. Cole entered carrying a supper tray, while a guard remained in the corridor. Arabella waited until the door closed. "How is Agnes?" "Mrs. Fenwick says she will live, but the laudanum may keep her unconscious until morning." "And Dr. Wren?" He was told Agnes returned. 20 minutes later, he left through the north gate with 2 cases. Julian had hesitated, and Wren had used the delay to flee. "What of Lady Lavinia?" "She is in her rooms." "Mr. Harcourt has stationed 2 of his own servants outside her door. Not to confine her," Arabella thought, to control who reached her. She removed a small key from the hem of her dress and pressed it into Mrs. Cole's hand. In the linen room, there is a locked oak chest containing duplicate account summaries. "Bring me the volume marked medical and charitable expenses." Years earlier, Arabella had created duplicate records after discovering that Rothmere's former steward altered the original ledgers. Julian had mocked the precaution as a merchant's suspicion. Tonight, it became the only part of the estate accounts Lucian did not control. Mrs. Cole returned an hour later with the volume hidden beneath folded sheets. Arabella worked by candlelight, tracing every payment made to Dr. Wren during the months surrounding Samuel's birth. Most were ordinary fees. 3 were not. The first, authorized by Lavinia, paid £50 to Wren on the morning after the delivery. The second purchased an imported blue sedative under the false description of nursery supplies. The third sent regular payments to a woman named Martha Crowe in Millcross. The payments continued every quarter for 5 years. Arabella copied the entries onto a strip of linen because Julian had removed every sheet of paper from the room. Then she wrote a short message to Mr. Elias Bell, the solicitor who had once handled her father's business affairs. A living child was recorded at my confinement. Dr. Wren has fled. Find Martha Crowe of Millcross and verify who lives in her household. Do not contact Rothmere. Mrs. Cole concealed the linen inside the lining of her sleeve. Send a tenant's son, Arabella instructed, someone who does not wear Rothmere colors. The housekeeper nodded. And if his grace asks, tell him I requested my account book. That is not the whole truth. No, but it is more truth than he has given me. Shortly before midnight, the lock turned. Julian entered alone, carrying Agnes's birth book and the silver bracelet. His expression had changed since the nursery. Certainty had given way to exhaustion. My solicitor examined the entry, he said. The paper, ink, and surrounding records are consistent with having been written 5 years ago. So Samuel was born alive. It proves Agnes believed he was alive. Arabella looked at him without speaking. Julian lowered his gaze first. Yes, he said. It is evidence that our son survived the birth. The admission came 5 years too late, but hearing it still tightened Arabella's throat. Have you arrested Lavinia? No. She denies writing the words on the receipt. The signature appears genuine, but the final sentence uses different ink. Because Wren added it after she paid him. That is possible. And Lucian? He claims he entered the nursery because he feared you would harm yourself. He seized me and demanded the evidence. He denies it. Of course he does. Julian placed the bracelet on the table between them. I have ordered the gates closed. No one else will leave Rothmere tonight. Wren already did. His silence confirmed that he knew. Arabella opened the duplicate account book and turned it toward him. She pointed to the payments made to Martha Crowe. Who is she? I do not know. Your sister has sent her money every 3 months since Samuel disappeared. Julian read the entries carefully. Millcross is 12 miles from here. I remember. We will go there at first light. We? Our child may be there. And suddenly that makes us allies? Pain crossed his face. Whatever I believed before, I want the truth now. You wanted order. You wanted silence. You wanted your family protected from scandal. The truth only became important after Agnes placed it in front of witnesses. I was wrong. You confined me less than 3 hours ago. I believed Lucian had been injured. You saw the bracelet, the drugged linen, and Lavinia's payment. You still chose his word over mine. Julian could not deny it. Arabella closed the ledger. You may travel to Millcross. I will conduct my own search. You are still my wife. That did not make my voice valuable to you. A knock interrupted them. Mrs. Cole entered with a folded message delivered by a village boy. The reply had arrived far sooner than Arabella expected. Mr. Bell had already located Martha Crowe. Arabella opened the note. Martha Crowe has raised a dark-haired boy of 5 years. She claims he was entrusted to her the morning after his mother died. 2 men arrived at her cottage tonight. They intend to move the child before dawn. Arabella reached for her cloak. Julian moved toward the door. This time, she did not follow him. She walked beside him, because Samuel was waiting, not because Julian had finally chosen to believe. Arabella and Julian reached Millcross shortly before dawn with Mrs. Cole's nephew as their guide. They took only 2 guards, both selected from men who had served the estate before Lucian arrived. Martha Crowe's cottage stood beside an abandoned mill. Light shone through one narrow window. Arabella knocked. A frightened woman opened the door with a kitchen knife in her hand. She was perhaps 40, dressed plainly, with the roughened fingers of someone who earned her living through sewing. Mrs. Crowe? Martha looked past Arabella toward the Rothmere carriage. You should not have come. My name is Arabella Vale. The knife slipped from Martha's fingers. Inside the cottage, a small boy slept beside the fire with a wooden horse tucked beneath his arm. Dark hair fell across his forehead. Arabella stopped breathing. For 5 years, she had imagined Samuel as an infant. She had never allowed herself to picture the child growing without her, taking his first steps, speaking his first words, or seeking comfort in another woman's arms. Now he lay only a few feet away. Julian entered behind her and went still. The boy possessed his gray eyes. Martha moved protectively between them. "I was told his mother died during childbirth." "She did not," Arabella said. "She was told that he died." Martha stared at her. Arabella showed her the silver bracelet. "Was he wearing this when he came to you?" "Yes." Dr. Wren removed it and told me never to mention it. A faint red mark curved beneath the boy's left shoulder where his nightshirt had slipped. Arabella remembered touching that crescent-shaped mark moments after his birth. Her knees nearly failed her. "What do you call him?" she asked. "Samuel." They had not even changed his name. The boy stirred and opened his eyes. He looked first at Martha, then at the strangers filling the cottage. "Who are they?" Martha knelt beside him. "This lady has come to ask about when you were a baby." Samuel studied Arabella with solemn curiosity. She wanted to cross the room, gather him into her arms, and reclaim every stolen year at once. Instead, she remained where she was. "My name is Arabella," she said. "I know." Samuel pointed toward the small portrait pinned above the mantel. "Martha said you were a duchess who helped the village farms." Arabella recognized the portrait. It had been copied from an estate notice she distributed during the winter grain shortage. Martha had allowed Samuel to know her without knowing who she was. "Did Dr. Wren bring him here?" Julian asked. Martha nodded. "He came with Lady Lavinia. They paid me to raise Samuel as my sister's orphan, and warned that his father would send him to an institution if anyone learned he was alive." Julian flinched. "Why did Lavinia continue paying you?" Arabella asked. "To ensure I remained silent. Last night, Wren sent word that Samuel must leave before dawn. I refused." Hooves sounded outside. 2 carriages stopped beside the mill. Julian reached for his pistol, but the first man through the door was not Wren. He was the local constable, accompanied by 4 officers. Lucian entered behind them. He carried a document bearing the Rothmere seal. "Arabella Vale," the constable announced. "I have an order preventing you from removing this child until his identity and guardianship are examined." Julian stepped forward. "On whose authority?" "Yours, Your Grace." Lucian handed him the document. It was not a forgery. The order relied on the settlement Julian had signed before the chapel ceremony, the same settlement that gave Lucian authority over Rothmere's private affairs and permitted him to act in the Duke's name when protecting estate property or dependents. By empowering Lucian, Julian had given him the means to place Samuel beyond Arabella's reach. "I revoke it," Julian said. "A formal revocation must be witnessed and entered with the county clerk," the constable replied. "Until then, the existing order stands. Samuel is my son. That claim will be heard, but removing him by force tonight would allow Mr. Harcourt to accuse both of you of abduction." Lucian's satisfaction was carefully hidden. "Where is Dr. Wren?" Arabella asked. "He has gone to prepare a safe residence for the boy." Martha pulled Samuel closer. "He stays with me." Lucian unfolded a second paper. "Dr. Wren has declared you unfit after accepting money to conceal the child's origins." "He paid me." "Then you may explain that before a magistrate." Samuel began to tremble. Arabella knelt several feet away from him. "Listen to me, Samuel. No one here will make you choose between Martha and me." "Are you taking me away?" "Not today." Lucian had expected her to fight, giving him grounds to have her restrained. Instead, Arabella stood and faced the constable. "I will obey the order until it is lawfully challenged. Record that I did so voluntarily, and record that Lucian Harcourt obtained it only hours after learning that Agnes Pike had returned with proof of Samuel's birth." The constable hesitated, then instructed his clerk to write her statement. Julian stared at the seal on the document. "This happened because of my signature," he said quietly. "Yes," Arabella replied, "and Samuel is paying for it." As the officers prepared to take Martha and Samuel into temporary parish protection, Samuel reached for Arabella's hand. He did not know she was his mother, but he was frightened, and among all the strangers in the cottage, he had chosen her. The constable did not separate Samuel from Martha. After Arabella insisted that the order permitted supervision but did not require removal, He agreed to place them in the rectory under 2 neutral parish officers. Lucian objected, but the wording of his own document left him no power to choose another guardian. Samuel released Arabella's hand only when Martha promised she would remain beside him. "I will return," Arabella told him. "Before breakfast?" The simple question struck harder than any accusation. "As soon as I can." Outside the rectory, Julian ordered his solicitor awakened. By sunrise, a formal revocation of Lucian's authority had been written, witnessed, and entered with the county clerk. Lucian no longer controlled the Rothmere seal, accounts, servants, or private estates, but the damage was already done. "You gave me that authority publicly," Lucian said, as Julian took the signet from him. "Now you humiliate me because your wife produced a bracelet and a frightened woman. I withdraw it because you used my name to conceal my son from me. I used it to prevent Arabella from abducting a child whose identity has not been proven." Arabella watched Julian carefully. 5 years earlier, he would have accepted that argument. It contained everything he valued then: caution, reputation, and the appearance of order. This time, he answered, "The investigation will proceed without your interference." Lucian's expression hardened. "Mother will challenge this. She may explain her payments to Dr. Wren while she does." Lucian left without bowing. At Rothmere, Julian went directly to Wren's office. The physician had removed his personal correspondence, but he had left behind years of household medical records. Arabella found her name in a volume dated 5 years earlier. Wren had described her as agitated, delusional, and potentially dangerous after childbirth. Attached to the entry was an authorization bearing Julian's genuine signature. It permitted Wren to control who entered her rooms, preserve samples of her writing, and restrict her correspondence until she recovered her reason. Arabella handed it to Julian. "You signed this 2 days after Samuel disappeared." His face changed as he read it. "Wren told me you had threatened to harm yourself. I demanded to see my child. He said you were refusing treatment. The treatment kept me awake but unable to move." Julian lowered the paper. "I believed him." "You did more than believe him. You gave him authority over me." She opened the following pages. Several of her letters had been copied into the volume, including one addressed to Agnes. The original had never been sent. Wren had preserved her handwriting, while ensuring that no request for help left Rothmere. Julian sat heavily behind the desk. "My signature allowed this. Your signature began it. Your refusal to question him allowed it to continue. I searched for Samuel. For 3 months. Then your mother warned that another inquiry would disgrace the family, and you ordered me never to speak of him before the servants." Julian did not defend himself. A drawer near the floor contained purchase records for the blue sedative. The substance had been ordered on Lavinia's household account 2 weeks before Samuel's birth. Arabella placed the receipt beside the stained linen from the nursery. The evidence now formed a clear chain. Lavinia purchased the drug. Wren administered it. Agnes recorded a living birth. Samuel's bracelet was hidden. Martha received regular payments afterward. Only the reason remained uncertain. "Lucian becomes heir presumptive if Samuel is declared dead," Arabella said. Julian looked toward the door through which his nephew had left. "My sister spent years urging me to name him, and yesterday you did." A servant arrived with a letter delivered from Lavinia's solicitor. Julian broke the seal. Lavinia had filed a petition challenging the revocation of Lucian's authority. She claimed Arabella had manipulated Agnes, bribed Martha, and selected a 5-year-old boy who resembled Julian in order to secure control of Rothmere. Until the dispute was heard, she demanded that Samuel remain separated from both Arabella and Julian. At the bottom was a list of proposed witnesses. The first name was Dr. Wren. The second was Julian himself. Arabella read the accompanying statement. It quoted his previous claims that she was irrational, unreliable, and obsessed with a child who had never lived. Lavinia did not need to forge his words. Julian had already given her everything required to destroy his wife's credibility. Julian read Lavinia's petition twice before placing it on Wren's desk. "I can order the constable to release Samuel." "No," Arabella said. "I am the Duke of Rothmere, and Lucian used your authority to place him there. If you use more authority to seize him back, Lavinia will claim we fear lawful examination. Julian's mouth tightened. Then what do you propose? We prove who Samuel is. Arabella began by separating every piece of evidence. The bracelet established Samuel's connection to the Vale family, but not how he reached Martha. The account book showed Lavinia's payments, but Lavinia could call them charity. Agnes's record proved a living birth, yet Wren would argue that she had made a mistake. Each item alone could be challenged. Together, they formed a pattern. Mrs. Fenwick entered before noon with news that Agnes had regained consciousness. Arabella went immediately to the guest chamber, accompanied by Julian and Mr. Bell, who recorded the conversation as an independent solicitor. Agnes spoke weakly but clearly. Samuel was born alive, she said. Dr. Wren gave the Duchess a blue preparation before the final pains. She could hear us, but she could not move. Who ordered the child removed? Mr. Bell asked. The Dowager Duchess. Lady Lavinia stood outside the room and brought Martha's direction. Julian looked away. Agnes continued. Wren carried Samuel through the east passage. Another infant, already dead, was placed in the cradle long enough for the physician to claim the Duchess's child had not survived. Arabella's hands grew cold. Whose child was it? I never knew. The body was taken away before daylight. No one allowed me to prepare it for burial. Why did you disappear? Wren threatened my daughter. I accepted money and left Rothmere. The confession cost Agnes visible effort. I told myself Samuel was safe because they had not killed him, but silence did not make me innocent. Arabella did not offer forgiveness. Agnes had preserved the truth, but she had also abandoned a mother to 5 years of torment. You will repeat this before the magistrates, Arabella said. Agnes nodded. If I live long enough. Julian ordered more guards outside the room. Arabella replaced them with men chosen by Mrs. Cole. He noticed but did not object. That afternoon, Julian summoned the relatives and senior servants who had witnessed the chapel ceremony. He stood in the same hall where he had previously forbidden anyone to question Wren's account. My statement concerning my wife was false, he said. Evidence now shows that our son was born alive. Any servant punished for discussing the birth will have wages and position restored. Lavinia was absent, but Lucian stood near the door. Julian continued. I also withdraw every claim that the Duchess's memory was unreliable. I repeated Dr. Wren's accusations without allowing her an independent physician or access to the records concerning her own child. The admission spread through the room in stunned silence. You are condemning yourself before any hearing has begun, Lucian said. I am correcting a lie I helped preserve. Arabella heard the difference. Julian no longer claimed that deception absolved him, but public honesty did not erase what he had done. Afterward, he approached her in the account room. I have restored your authority over the estates. You should never have taken it. I know. No, Julian. You know now, because Lucian used the power you gave him against Samuel. When you used that same power against me, you considered it necessary. He accepted the words without protest. A clerk arrived from Millcross with notice of a preliminary hearing before 3 county magistrates. They would decide whether Samuel could remain with Martha while the questions of identity, custody, and inheritance proceeded through the proper courts. The hearing would take place in 2 days. Attached to the notice was a copy of the evidence Lavinia intended to present. Among the documents was a confession bearing Arabella's name and what appeared to be her signature. It stated that her son had died during birth, and that, driven mad by grief, she had paid Martha to train another child to answer to the name Samuel. Julian stared at the signature. It looks exactly like yours. It should, Arabella replied. You gave Wren 5 years of my private letters. The false confession was dated the morning after Samuel's birth, when Arabella had been drugged, confined, and unable to hold a pen. But everyone who could confirm that fact had either served Wren or obeyed Julian. The hearing took place in the Millcross Assembly Room before 3 county magistrates. It would not determine Samuel's inheritance or permanently decide his parentage. Its purpose was narrower, to decide where the child would remain while those questions were examined by the proper courts. Martha sat beside Samuel at the rear of the chamber. Arabella resisted the urge to join them. She would not let Lavinia suggest that Samuel had been coached by the woman claiming to be his mother. Lavinia arrived with Lucian and 2 solicitors. Turenne did not appear. Her solicitor began by presenting Samuel's placement agreement. It described him as the orphan son of an unnamed servant and appointed Martha as his paid caretaker under Wren's supervision. Lady Lavinia acted charitably, the solicitor claimed. She concealed the child's identity to protect his dead mother's reputation. Then why did she pay Wren rather than Martha directly? Arabella asked. The presiding magistrate allowed the question. Lavinia answered calmly. Because Dr. Wren arranged the care. Mr. Bell then presented Agnes's sworn testimony, the birth record, Samuel's bracelet, the blue linen, and 5 years of payments from Lavinia's account. The evidence unsettled the room, but Lavinia had prepared for it. She produced Arabella's alleged confession. The paper bore Arabella's signature and personal seal. It claimed that Samuel had died during birth, and that Arabella later paid Martha to raise another child whom she could present as Rothmere's heir. Martha rose in outrage. I had never seen her grace before yesterday. Lucian's solicitor immediately replied, Your livelihood depends upon her claim. The magistrate ordered Martha to sit. Then Lavinia called Julian. The chamber became silent as he took his place before the bench. 5 years ago, the solicitor asked, did you describe your wife as irrational after childbirth? I did. Did she insist that a dead child had cried? She insisted that our living son had cried. That is your belief now. What did you believe then? Julian looked toward Arabella. I believe Dr. Wren. Did you authorize him to restrict the Duchess's letters and visitors? Yes. Did you believe those precautions necessary because she might harm herself or others? Julian could have softened the answer. He could have claimed confusion or placed the blame entirely upon Wren. Instead, he said, I accepted that claim without obtaining another physician's opinion. I denied my wife access to the records and witnesses she requested. A murmur spread through the room. The solicitor pressed harder. So either your judgment 5 years ago was false, or your judgment now has been corrupted by your wife. My judgment 5 years ago was governed by pride. I trusted the explanation that demanded the least from me. Lavinia's expression tightened. Julian continued before the solicitor could stop him. I called Arabella unstable whenever her questions threatened my family's reputation. Dr. Wren deceived me, but I repeatedly chose not to test his claims. That choice was mine. The confession damaged his authority, but it also destroyed Lavinia's attempt to use his former accusations without context. Still, the forged document remained. The magistrates compared its signature with several genuine letters. Even Arabella had to admit the resemblance was nearly perfect. Can you prove that you did not write this? The presiding magistrate asked. I was drugged and physically unable to write on the date shown. Dr. Wren's records state otherwise. Dr. Wren created both documents, but he is absent, and the paper bears your seal. The magistrates withdrew briefly. When they returned, they ordered Samuel to remain with Martha at the rectory for 1 additional day. If Arabella could not disprove the confession by noon, he would be transferred to a neutral guardian chosen by the court until the larger case was resolved. Outside the chamber, Lucian approached Arabella. You have less than 24 hours, he said. Arabella looked again at the copied confession. The signature was excellent. The wording was careful. The seal appeared genuine. But the paper was wrong. Its surface carried a faint woven mark she recognized from Rothmere's newest account books, a paper stock the estate had not purchased until 3 years after Samuel's birth. Lavinia had forged Arabella's past on paper that did not yet exist. Arabella returned to Rothmere and opened the account book containing the estate's paper purchases. The forged confession bore a small woven crown visible only when held before a flame. She found the same mark beside an entry from 3 years earlier, when Rothmere first ordered paper from Hartwell Mill. The mill's invoice included the date, quantity, and watermark design. The confession was dated 5 years ago. Julian examined both pages. Then the paper proves it was written later. It proves more than that. Arabella placed the confession beside a letter she had written on the morning before Samuel's birth. The signatures appeared identical at first glance. but her father had trained her to write rapidly while keeping accounts. Whenever the letters A and V appeared together, she joined them without lifting her pen. The forger had separated the strokes. "They copied the shape," she said, "but not the way I write." Mr. Bell sent a writer to Hartwell Mill. By evening, the mill owner provided a signed statement confirming that the crowned paper had not been manufactured until 2 years after the supposed confession. The next morning, Arabella returned to the assembly room with the original invoice, the mill owner's statement, and several genuine signatures written before and after Samuel's birth. Lavinia remained composed when the watermark was exposed. "Paper can be replaced," she argued. "The original may have been damaged. Then it would be a copy," Arabella replied, "not the original confession you swore I signed." One of the magistrates examined the seal. It was genuine, but Julian recognized a fine crack running through the edge. "That is my mother's private seal," he said. It disappeared from her desk shortly before her death. Lavinia controlled her rooms afterward. Lavinia's calm finally slipped. Lucian rose. "My mother is not responsible for every missing object at Rothmere." "No," Arabella said, "only for the objects that repeatedly appear on forged documents protecting your inheritance." The magistrates rejected the confession as unreliable and ordered it retained for investigation. They also ruled that Samuel would remain with Martha while his identity was examined, but Arabella could visit him freely and begin building a relationship with him. It was not full recognition, but it prevented Lavinia from taking him. Outside the chamber, Julian approached Arabella. "You saved him without using my title. Your title was never the evidence. I understand that now." "No, you are beginning to." A carriage raced into the square before he could answer. Martha stumbled from it, pale and breathless. "Samuel is gone." Arabella caught her shoulders. "What happened?" Dr. Wren came to the rectory during the hearing. He said Samuel had developed the same fever that killed his mother and needed immediate treatment. He carried an order bearing the Rothmere seal. Lucian's authority was revoked. The parish officer did not know. By the time I returned from speaking with the rector, they had taken him. "Who is they?" "Wren and Lucian." Martha pressed Samuel's broken wooden horse into Arabella's hand. He dropped this beside the carriage. Julian summoned the constable, but Arabella was already examining the fresh mud on the toy. Pale chalk clung to one wheel, mixed with dried heather. Only one Rothmere road crossed both chalk ground and open heath. It led to the abandoned hunting lodge near the river. This time, Arabella would not arrive too late. Arabella led the constable toward the hunting lodge by the old tenant's road, while Julian and 2 officers approached from the river. The lodge had been used during winter shoots until its roof began leaking. Arabella knew its accounts, repairs, and forgotten entrances because she had once prepared an estimate for restoring it. A narrow servant's passage opened behind the abandoned ice house. She entered with Martha and 1 officer. Voices carried through the cellar ceiling. "The magistrates rejected the confession," Lucian said. "The boy is useless to us now." "He is not useless while his existence can send us both to prison," Wren replied. Samuel began to cry. Martha moved toward the stairs, but Arabella stopped her. If Samuel heard the woman he trusted, he might call out and expose them. Arabella climbed alone. Through a gap in the door, she saw Samuel seated beside the fireplace. He was frightened but unhurt. Wren packed medicine bottles into a leather case while Lucian watched the road with a pistol. "You forged the transfer order," Wren said, "with the seal you gave me, and you forged Arabella's confession. At my mother's instruction." Neither man realized that the seller carried their voices directly to the officer below. Arabella pushed open the door. Samuel rose. "Arabella!" Lucian turned with the pistol, but she remained near the wall, away from the child. "The constable knows where you are," she said. "If Samuel is harmed, neither Lavinia nor the Rothmere name can protect you." Lucian pointed the weapon toward her. "My uncle made me his heir. Only because you helped hide the son who came before you. He chose me publicly, and revoked your authority the moment he understood what you had done." Wren stopped packing. "You said the settlement could not be withdrawn." Lucian's attention shifted toward him. Arabella saw the weakness immediately. He also told you Lavinia would protect you, she said to Wren. Yet the forged confession blames Martha and me. There is nothing in it connecting Lavinia to Samuel's removal. Wren's face tightened. You were meant to carry every crime alone, Arabella continued. Once Lucian inherited, you would become the only surviving witness. Lucian raised the pistol toward Wren. Do not listen to her. That movement gave Samuel the chance to run. Arabella crossed the room and pulled him behind the stone fireplace as the cellar door opened. Martha and the officer emerged, while Julian entered through the front with the constable. Lucian attempted to reach the rear door. Julian caught his arm, and the pistol discharged into the ceiling. The constable forced Lucian to the floor before he could fire again. Wren did not resist. I will testify, he said. But I want the court to know that the Dowager Duchess began it, and Lavinia continued it, Arabella replied. Wren lowered his head. Yes. He confessed that Samuel had been born healthy. Lavinia purchased the drug used on Arabella, supplied Martha's address, and paid Wren to falsify the medical record. After the Dowager Duchess died, Lavinia continued the payments so Samuel would remain hidden until Julian formally acknowledged Lucian as heir presumptive. Wren had also copied Arabella's signature from the letters Julian allowed him to confiscate. Lucian said nothing as the officers bound his hands. Samuel emerged from behind the fireplace. He looked at Julian but did not approach him. Martha knelt and opened her arms. The boy ran to her first. Arabella felt the pain of it, but she did not look away. Martha had comforted him through every illness and nightmare. Love could not be erased merely because the truth had changed. When Samuel was calm, Martha whispered something to him. He crossed the room and stopped before Arabella. Did you really hear me cry? Yes. Did you look for me? Every day. He considered her answer, then placed his small hand inside hers. I want Martha to come with us. Arabella closed her fingers gently around his. She will. Julian stood several feet away, watching the family his choices had helped divide. He did not ask Samuel for recognition, or Arabella for gratitude. Outside, the constable prepared separate carriages for Lucian and Wren. Before entering his, Wren gave Arabella one final piece of information. Lavinia is leaving Rothmere tonight. She has the original payment ledger and your missing letters. Those records could prove the entire conspiracy, or disappear with her forever. Lavinia did not escape Rothmere. The constable reached the estate before her carriage departed and found the missing payment ledger inside her traveling case, together with Arabella's confiscated letters and the Dowager Duchess's seal. The ledger recorded every payment to Wren and Martha. One entry, written in Lavinia's hand, ordered Wren to keep Samuel hidden until Julian formally acknowledged Lucian as heir presumptive. Confronted with the records and Wren's confession, Lavinia continued to call the conspiracy a defense of Rothmere. You brought a merchant's blood into this family, she told Arabella. Samuel would have inherited everything. He still will, Arabella replied. The difference is that now he will know exactly what people may do when they worship a name more than a child. Over the following months, the evidence was examined by the courts. Agnes's birth record, Martha's testimony, Samuel's bracelet, the medical accounts, and Wren's confession established that Samuel was the lawful son of Julian and Arabella. The false death entry was corrected. Samuel's place in the family succession was formally recognized. Lavinia and Wren were tried for conspiracy, abduction, forgery, and administering drugs without consent. Lucian faced additional charges for using forged authority to remove Samuel from lawful protection. None of them retained access to Rothmere's property or influence. Martha was cleared of wrongdoing. The court accepted that she had raised Samuel under false information and had protected him once she learned the truth. Arabella refused to remove her from his life. She is his mother in every memory he possesses, she told Julian. I will not punish Samuel by forcing him to lose another parent. Julian agreed without attempting to claim authority over the decision. Before the relatives and servants who had witnessed the chapel ceremony, he returned to the same altar where he had placed the signet in Lucian's hand. Arabella stood beside Samuel and Martha, not beside her husband. 5 years ago, My wife told me that our son had cried, Julian said. I called her grief madness because believing Dr. Wren protected my pride and my family's reputation. No one in the chapel moved. I restricted her letters, denied her access to witnesses, and used her suffering to remove the authority she had earned. Others deceived me, but they did not force me to betray my wife. That choice was mine. He placed the signet on the altar. Julian then signed documents restoring Arabella's complete control over her marriage trust and the unentailed estates she had rescued. He created a protected fund for Samuel's education and transferred the West Farms into a trust managed by Arabella for the tenants. None of it purchased forgiveness. When they were alone, Julian faced her in the account room. I will not ask you to forget. Good, because I cannot. I have taken a house in London. Samuel will remain here with you and Martha. I will visit only if he wishes it, and only with your permission. Arabella studied him. His remorse was real, but remorse could not return 5 stolen years or erase the nights she had spent doubting her own memory. We will live separately, she said. If trust ever returns, it will not be because you confessed before an audience. It will be because of what you do when no one is watching. Julian bowed his head. I understand. No, Arabella replied. You are beginning to. 6 months later, the old nursery was no longer locked. Arabella converted it into a schoolroom where the estate children learned reading, arithmetic, and practical bookkeeping. Martha helped Samuel adjust to Rothmere, while Arabella allowed their relationship to grow without demanding that he replace one mother with another. Julian kept every promise from a distance. He corrected the accusations he had made, paid Agnes's medical expenses, and never requested praise or reconciliation. One spring morning, Samuel found the miniature cradle stored beneath a white sheet. Was this mine? He asked. For a few hours, he placed his broken wooden horse inside it. Do we need it any more? Arabella looked at the cradle that had represented death, silence, and 5 years of stolen truth. No, she said, we do not. Together, they carried it through the chapel doors. At the same altar where Julian had tried to erase Samuel's place in the family, Arabella opened the outer doors and pushed the empty cradle into the sunlight. This time, nothing inside Rothmere remained hidden.